October 1975. Rockfield Studios, Wales. Freddie Mercury stood at the piano in a remote Welsh farmhouse, about to create the most audacious piece of music in rock history. What emerged over the next few weeks would shatter every rule about what a hit single could be, forcing radio stations to rethink their formats and proving that audiences were hungry for music that challenged their expectations. This is the story of Bohemian Rhapsody, the 6-minute masterpiece that EMI Records said was too long, too weird, and too uncommercial to ever succeed, but which instead became one of the greatest songs ever recorded. But to understand the revolutionary nature of what Freddie was attempting, you have to understand the rigid constraints that governed popular music in 1975. Radio stations operated on strict formulas that dictated hit singles should be 3 minutes or less, follow predictable verse-chorus structures, and fit neatly into established genres. The idea of a song that combined opera, hard rock, and ballad elements in a single composition was not just unusual, it was considered commercial suicide by industry professionals who understood how the music business worked. Freddie had been carrying the seed of Bohemian Rhapsody in his mind for years, playing fragments of the melody on piano at parties and informal gatherings, but never finding the right moment or creative environment to fully develop his vision. The song existed in pieces: a ballad section he had written on piano, an opera segment that reflected his love of theatrical drama, and a hard rock conclusion that showcased Queen's instrumental power. The challenge was connecting these disparate elements into a coherent musical narrative. The recording process at Rockfield Studios was unlike anything Queen had attempted before. Traditional rock recording involved laying down rhythm tracks and building arrangements systematically, but Bohemian Rhapsody required a completely different approach. Freddie had to convince his bandmates to trust his vision for a song that seemed to defy every convention about how rock music should sound, look, and function as a commercial product in the mid-1970s music marketplace. Producer Roy Thomas Baker initially resisted Freddie's concept, arguing that radio programmers would never play a 6-minute song that changed styles multiple times and included operatic vocals performed by rock musicians. The opera section alone, with its overlapping harmonies and theatrical vocals, required dozens of overdubs and innovative recording techniques that pushed the limits of 1970s studio technology. Each harmony had to be recorded separately and layered to create the illusion of a full operatic chorus. The technical challenges were immense. The song's complex arrangement required precise timing and seamless transitions between sections that bore no resemblance to each other musically or stylistically. Brian May's guitar work had to support both the gentle ballad opening and the thunderous rock conclusion, while Roger Taylor's drumming had to serve the song's dramatic narrative rather than simply providing rhythmic foundation. John Deacon's bass lines had to connect musical sections that seemed to exist in completely different universes. The recording of the operatic section alone took 3 weeks of meticulous work. Each vocal harmony had to be recorded individually, with Freddie, Brian, and Roger layering their voices dozens of times to create the illusion of a full operatic chorus. The studio's 24-track recording equipment was pushed to its absolute limits, with some sections requiring bounce downs to create space for additional overdubs. The technological constraints of 1975 meant that every decision was permanent. Every take had to be perfect. Freddie's vocal performance on Bohemian Rhapsody showcased his extraordinary range and theatrical instincts, but it also revealed his willingness to risk everything for artistic vision. The operatic section required him to sing in multiple vocal registers and characters, creating distinct personalities within the song's narrative structure. This wasn't just technical showmanship, it was storytelling through vocal performance, using the human voice as both musical instrument and dramatic device. When Queen presented the finished recording to EMI Records, the label's reaction was immediate and negative. Executives argued that radio stations would never play a 6-minute song, that the opera section would confuse rock audiences, and that the song's lack of traditional structure made it impossible to market effectively. They demanded that Queen edit the song down to a more conventional length and remove the operatic elements that made the composition unique and commercially risky. Freddie's response to EMI's demands was characteristically defiant. He refused to allow any editing of Bohemian Rhapsody, insisting that the song's power lay in its complete form and that cutting it would destroy everything that made it special. This wasn't just artistic stubbornness, it was strategic vision. Freddie understood that Bohemian Rhapsody's unconventional structure was its greatest strength, not a commercial liability to be minimized or eliminated for market considerations. The breakthrough came when DJ Kenny Everett received an advance copy of the song and began playing it on his radio show, despite EMI's reluctance to release it as a single. Listener response was immediate and overwhelming. Audiences didn't just tolerate the song's 6-minute length and unusual structure, they embraced it enthusiastically, calling radio stations to request repeated plays and proving that conventional wisdom about what made a hit single was fundamentally wrong about audience preferences. The success of Bohemian Rhapsody forced the entire music industry to reconsider its assumptions about audience attention spans and musical complexity. Radio programmers who had insisted that 6-minute songs were too long for commercial radio found themselves playing Bohemian Rhapsody multiple times per day in response to listener demand. The song's success proved that audiences were more sophisticated and adventurous than industry professionals had assumed, fundamentally changing how record labels approached unconventional material. The impact extended far beyond commercial success. Bohemian Rhapsody demonstrated that rock music could incorporate elements from classical music, opera, and musical theater without losing its essential power or appeal. The song opened possibilities for countless other artists who had been told their musical ideas were too complex, too long, or too unconventional for mainstream success, essentially rewriting the rules of what popular music could achieve. The music video for Bohemian Rhapsody, featuring the band's faces emerging from darkness in geometric patterns, became almost as influential as the song itself. The visual treatment matched the music's theatrical ambition and helped establish music video as an art form capable of enhancing and interpreting complex musical compositions rather than simply documenting live performances or providing basic promotional material. Looking back, Bohemian Rhapsody stands as one of the most important songs in popular music history, the moment when an artist's uncompromising vision proved more powerful than industry conventional wisdom. Freddie Mercury had created something that record executives said was impossible: a 6-minute opera rock epic that became one of the biggest hits of the decade and redefined popular music's creative boundaries. The song's influence on subsequent generations of musicians has been immeasurable. Artists from genres as diverse as progressive rock, heavy metal, and alternative pop have cited Bohemian Rhapsody as proof that ambitious, complex music could achieve mainstream success without compromising artistic integrity. The song demonstrated that audiences were capable of appreciating sophisticated musical arrangements and unconventional song structures. The legacy of Bohemian Rhapsody extends beyond music into popular culture itself. The song has been featured in countless films, television shows, and commercials, each usage reinforcing its status as a cultural touchstone that transcends generational boundaries. Its resurgence in popularity following the 2018 Queen biographical film proved that great music remains relevant regardless of changing trends. The young man who walked into Rockfield Studios with fragments of an impossible song had emerged with a masterpiece that redefined what popular music could be. Bohemian Rhapsody proved that audiences were hungry for music that challenged them, that radio formats could be changed by undeniable quality, and that sometimes the most commercial thing an artist can do is to refuse to compromise their artistic vision for commercial viability.